When I woke up, I heard my neighbor. We never locked our doors in Farmington, and she was saying, "Jenny, Jenny, Jenny," and I thought she was coming to see how we had redone our upstairs. And I said, "Oh, I'm coming, Patty, I'm coming." I didn't smell coffee, and I smelled coffee every morning because John would put it on, and I smelled it. I thought, "John's not home." And I said, "Patty," and she just took her shoulders and just took them up against her shoulders like that. She says, "Jenny," she said, "something's happened in the mines."
About 5:30 a.m. on Wednesday, November 20th, 1968, a massive explosion ripped through Consolidation Coal Company's No. 9 mine underneath Farmington and Mannington in West Virginia. 21 miners working in other parts of the mine made it to the surface, but 78 remained trapped inside.
Uncle John, we heard that Uncle John had come out for supplies. And I'll never forget Mom telling me she was hoping that maybe Uncle John had not gone back because the bucket would not, he just missed it maybe. Everybody was hoping. When we heard, I said, "How bad is it?" And Mom said, "We don't know. It's been pretty bad." And I'll never forget, I was in Morgantown, and for some reason I wanted to fly and see what was going on. So we got in my little plane, and I got an instructor. And I remember flying over Llewellyn Portal, and just the absolute unbelievable decimation that I saw. Smoke was bellowing out of the shaft, and I knew it was really bad. I knew it had to be extremely bad. And then we flew back to Morgantown. I drove back home as quickly as I could. Everyone started gathering out at the old company store at No. 9.
The night of the explosion, when it happened, my father took myself and a good friend of mine, his name was Danny Blair. We went up to his house, and on the way up, we were talking about, that was my dad's last shift of work. We were talking about opening up a gas station. Saturday was the grand opening. Danny was going to run the gas station for him and everything, and I was 16 at the time. So when we got up to Danny's house, we were laughing, and I told Dad, I said, "Why don't you just take the shift off? That's your last shift. Don't work it, and we'll go trout fishing," because we trout fished all the time. Right. And he said, "No, I owe them. I owe them the last shift of work."
When rescue crews arrived to help, they found themselves facing a dangerous and impossible task.
I think 21 survived. But they were, I don't know what, 7, 8 miles away from the blast?
Yeah.
And right near the surface, on the slope. But anyone in that area, the blast was so violent, I think that shaft was like 600 feet. And the fire blew up out of it and took the elevator and everything and sent it into orbit. So it was a tremendous blast.
My uncle, my mother's brother, pulled in the driveway, and I said, "Well, what's he doing here?" Well, he come to the door and opened up the door. And he says, "Where's your mother at?" And I said, "Well, she's still in bed." So Mom come to the door, and he told Mom, he says, "No. 9 is blew up." So we stood around the house there, and I was young at the time, and I had 3 sisters, and we didn't know what to do. You didn't know where to go or what to do or who to talk to. So my dad's brothers had come to the house, and they heard that they were bringing people out of a air shaft, Mawkins Run. So being young that I was, I snuck out and got in the car. We went around to the Mawkins Run air shaft, and I believe they brought 2 people out in the first bucket load, and then there were 2 or 3 more come out in the second bucket load. And I knew this was the last bucket. And the only thing I wanted to see was my dad's face. You get to talking about this, it brings you back to the very same day.
Like it happened last night, huh?
Like it happened last night.
Up until there was no rock dusting or no controlling of the mine dust, which is basically gunpowder. I mean, just gunpowder. And there was no way to suppress that. And if you had an explosion, it just shook so much of this stuff loose. And then if there was any type of an igniter, then boom, you just, and I'm understanding, and people to know, and I finally got the report, 20-some years later. But there must have been 5 or, I mean, these were horrific explosions under mine.
The thing about number 9, though, you got to understand, that thing was over 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
It was over. There was nothing, and we didn't have a very good rescue plan, operation, or anything, but it was over in 40 minutes. Anybody that went underground after that and saw the condition that mine was in, or anybody that understood that thing exploded 16 times and the fire kept burning. So it's nothing that anyone, at the time, I was mad. I mean, I didn't get over it quick either. I mean, I was mad at the company, mad at my brothers for not fighting with me, mad at the world because I didn't understand what a coal mine was like, and particularly that one.
Well, after being in the industry for as long as we've been in it, you look at that picture of all that smoke coming out of that shaft, common sense tells you that there's nothing can sustain life.
So where are you going to go?
Yeah.
Where are you going to go?
You can't live in it.
No.
Well, the air was so bad, the fires were so hot, there was just no way that the mine rescuers, and these are the bravest people that I've ever been around, they'll go in and do whatever, and they just could not go past certain points, and they tried for, I think it was 3 or 4 days, and just every feasible possible thing they could do, and they all came to the conclusion, every reading and everything they had done, it was just so lethal down there. That's when they said, we've got to shut this thing off, and if we don't smother, and that means entomb it, and that means blocking all types of entries where air could have been used to ignite or keep the fires and the explosions happening. And that's when they made that decision. Yeah, there was no funerals. I mean, that was a sad scenario. The night that they said they were going to seal the mine, the bishop came in, all the political leaders and community leaders came in. My father was there, and all the Consolidated Coal Company people were there, and I never forget, everyone held hands and said the Lord's Prayer. And I remember that, and just the screaming and the agony, because they knew that that was a tomb then. That was the tomb. And it was some time after that before they could open it back up, and they recovered quite a few, but there's still many that weren't recovered.
I know that was a big thing with our family, not finding Dad's body. And you still go there, and I mean, that is my father's gravesite. And I actually, D'Amico's funeral home got me a plaque where he was in the Navy, and it's, as you go up the walk, it's on the right-hand side, and Consol did set it for me. I mean, they put it in the ground for me and everything. But that is my dad's grave as far as I'm concerned.
It took 5 years to find what remains there was of him, and the clavicle and the jawbone was all they found. And we had a funeral. We did have a funeral.
People don't realize how hard it is to really, I mean, it's 40 years ago, guys, but our 40 years stopped. It stopped.
3 months later, the miners' black lung strike prompted state legislators to pass a law awarding benefits to black lung victims for the first time in state history. That law also strengthened mine safety standards. Then in December, the United States Congress passed stronger federal legislation to protect miners.
They did make swift changes in the federal government and federal mine laws and all the new safety procedures. The rock dusting, which would have prevented it, might have been able to go in quicker because you didn't have these recurring, because it did keep the lethal coal dust down, but a lot of things were changed.
Obviously, you can look at the number of deaths and injuries, but one thing that's really telling, every year you'd have at least one major disaster, and that generally includes an accident that killed 10 or more. And you just go write it on the wall somewhere was what happened. And those are such a rarity anymore.
I think the changes were, of course, were much needed, And unless there's a human tragedy or such as these, you know, why is human nature wait until we have such a catastrophic tragedy? That's just human nature. It seems to be.